He plays his pawn to d4. And now Nodirbek. He would love to play a fighting opening. He goes knight to f6. And pawn to c4. So Arjun not really going for any London system or Jobawa Londons with knight c3. Trying to be very solid. e6. And I think that's the right approach. When things are not working out too well for you, it's good to control the center, develop your pieces, rely on the years old wisdom which has worked for many. Knight to c3, the bishop comes to b4, pinning the knight. The Nimzo Indian is on the board, and let's see what Arjun does. He goes queen to c2, the classical variation of the Nimzo Indian. And d6 played here by Nodirbek. This is lesser known line than, let's say, castles or d5 and many other moves. But I think Nodirbek wants to fight for the full point, and this is why he's gone for this. So short castles here. And let's see what Arjun does now. He brings his bishop out to d3. This is a typical way to place your pieces in this e3 variation. Then you bring your knight to either e2 or f3. Nodirbek strikes in the center with c5. And Arjun now brings his knight out to f3, controlling the center. So, a normal natural development of pieces. The knight comes out to c6, putting pressure on the center. And white will now just castle, I believe. Yes, Arjun simply castles. White has a problem to solve of his c1 bishop, while black has a problem to solve of his c8 bishop. Let's see. Ooh, Nodirbek, sort of unprovoked, takes the knight on c3. Now, whether this was required or not is questionable, but he decided to get rid of it. Now queen takes. And perhaps one of the strategies in such positions is that you give up your dark squared bishop and then try to put your pawn on a dark square. So which is why he goes queen e7. And now I believe he wants to play e5 later on. Let's see what Arjun does. Ooh, Arjun takes on c5, which is a very, very logical move because he's slightly trying to open up the position now. So he has the bishop pair and he wants to open the position. Knight comes to e5. Arjun trying to trade off few pieces so that his slight lacking in development can be covered. Knight takes e5. And now queen takes e5. So the terrain is being set. White seems to be slightly better with the two bishops. But black is very solid. And one of the logical moves to play here is rook d8 followed by b6, bishop b7, putting the bishop on this long diagonal. Arjun plays his bishop back to c2. And Nodirbek now thinks for a bit and plays knight to g4. Interesting move, a sharp choice. I would have played like bishop d7, bishop c6 or b6, bishop b7, which is also normal. But knight g4, the idea of it is to move the queen away, queen g3, and then push the pawn to e5, opening up the bishop. So he pushes his pawn to e5. Now the bishop has opened up in the position. And pawn to f3 played by Arjun. So he wants to kick the knight away. The knight can go to h6, but then there is e4. So he goes back to f6 here. And now a question to Arjun, whether to push the pawn to e4 or not. he decides against it, and maybe it's a wise idea because once you push your pawn to e4, your bishop on c2 gets a bit closed. Here he can put his bishop on b2 and attack the e5 pawn. Knight goes to h5, attacking the queen, and I believe just queen f2 seems like a logical move to play here. Arjun comes back and he plays his queen back to f2. Next up, there could be bishop b2, and bishop comes to d7. So Nodirbek wants to put his bishop on c6, and seems logical. Bishop comes out, and slowly and steadily white is solidifying his edge, because now he's no longer behind in development. He can now contest the d file by bringing one of his rooks. Yes, rook a d1 on the board. So Arjun seems to be doing pretty well here, and seems to be in a good position. Now h6 played here by Nodirbek. Whether this advantage is sufficient for something concrete remains to be seen. Nodirbek gets up, and Arjun now plays his pawn to h3. His idea now is to push maybe g4, could be one plan, but it's a useful move, just playing pawn to h3. Nodirbek comes back, knight f6. Well, one plan can be to simply trade the rooks, but I guess there's nothing much to be gained by it. I love this move, queen g3, because now you are putting pressure on the e5 pawn, and pushing it makes no sense because fe4 opens up the rook here. So Nodirbek decides to actually trade rooks. He goes rook takes d1. Arjun takes back, rook takes d1. We have Faustino Oro there, who's looking at the score sheet intently, the youngest participant in the challengers. Now rook e8, he defends the pawn on e5, so the queen and bishop are attacking. a4 played by Arjun, a useful move, gaining some space on the queen side, may come in handy later. And knight h5 by Nodirbek. He's trying to move the queen away. Queen comes back, and perhaps a smart move is just to come back with your knight and ask white, how are you going to make progress? But Nodirbek goes active with queen g5, and that's a huge mistake. It's a huge blunder because, well, it makes sense. He wants to maybe control and g3 square and put his queen in an active place. But now Arjun has a powerful move at his disposal. Let's see if he manages to find it here. And Arjun does find it. g4. If you see, before this move was played, he had 48 minutes. He just took 3 minutes on the clock to make this move. And all of a sudden, Nodirbek is in trouble. He goes f5. Why? Because if knight f6, h4 traps the queen. He seems to have missed this completely. So he's now panicking. And Arjun goes h4. Very strong move. Pushing the queen away. The queen has to move. Queen f6. He goes queen g6. And now you can just take the pawn. Bishop takes f5. Takes it. Bishop takes f5. And Nodirbek comes back. So one good thing that has happened for Nodirbek now is that after g takes h5, he's not losing a piece because f5 is hanging. So he can bring back his knight. Rook d6 is a phenomenal move. Maybe threatening bishop g6. He goes knight to f6 back. And while Arjun can build up this position calmly, the direct g5 is super strong and he finds it. He plays g5 on the board, and it seems like Arjun is very close to get his first win of the tournament, but also the first win in Vaikanze in the Masters section. Something that we never thought that Arjun would have to struggle for. After all, he's 2800. But here he is, beating one of the top players of the tournament. This just goes to show how strong he is. Knight h5. And now maybe e4. Just solidifying that bishop there. He goes bishop g4, which is also fine. Wants to attack the knight. Maybe get queen h4 and attack it here. Queen e7. By the way, one thing to notice is bishop g6 was possible, but there is queen e7. But he went here, queen e7, and now rook takes c6. In fact, rook g6 was the best move, but maybe Arjun didn't like rook d8 and he gets some counterplay on the d file. So he takes here on c6. And after b takes c6, the thing to notice now is that Arjun is got two bishops for a rook, which is huge. He also has an extra pawn, which will go away now after queen takes g5. But somehow Nodirbek seems to have gotten back into the game. Bishop to g4, and a very important move now is e4 to destabilize the bishop on g4. This is what happens when your tournament hasn't particularly been great. You are a bit shaky in converting your advantages. E4, and yeah, this is not easy. He goes king f1, which is the best move. Now if he takes f3, just bishop f3, and maybe queen e3, you can play that endgame. But I'm not so sure if you want to do that. So Nodirbek decides to keep the queens on the board with queen g6, a good move by him. And Arjun now pins the pawn with queen c2. Fantastic move. Because anything else would have been like e takes f3 and the queen would have entered into b1. So he goes queen c2. Rook f8 played, a mistake. He could have played queen h7 trying to enter here, and black had good counterplay. But rook f8 is a mistake. Not so easy to see why. But if you look carefully, the point is that now after the next move, which is the winning move for Arjun if he finds it, not at all easy, but I believe Arjun can do it. He's taking his time here. He has 14 minutes on the clock. And this might be the final move that Arjun has to find in order to win. And he finds it. Queen g2 is the move. Because now the threat is bishop e6 check. You can't take the bishop because of g7 mate. And then the queens are traded. So e takes f3. Bishop e6 check. So king comes up to h7, defending the queen. Now you can take the queen. That also is a good position for white. But you can also give a check here. Queen to h3 check. Queen h6 played. And here is the neat point about all that is happening. The neat point is that this endgame is completely lost for black because this pawn is weak. I just take it. These are weak pawns. The two bishops run complete havoc on the position. Black has no counterplay. And Arjun gets up. He knows that he's winning now. And there doesn't seem to be any counterplay. Rook b8 played, which is interesting. He wants to get some play down the b file. In comes a check. You can go king g8 back, but then I'll anyway take here. So he goes g6, asking a question. Queen h6, king h6, bishop c2 is a lazy way to play the position and is winning. But Arjun, being the calculation monster that he is, takes the pawn on g6. A fantastic move. You have to take back with the king. And the question is this going to be checkmate? So queen enters to e6. You can't go back to h7. There is queen f7 mate coming up. So he has to move the king. King h5. King g5 would have been met with queen e5 check. And perhaps the rook would be hanging there. So king h5. Plays bishop f6. Very important move. Because if you would have played queen e5 here, there would have been queen g5 and my queen enters this side. So bishop f6 takes control of this very important square, threatening queen f5 mate. Nodirbek plays queen h7. In comes a check. And there are hardly any moves left. King g6. And he just takes the rook. So brilliant calculation there by Arjun. He has controlled the h2 square, no checks there. The h4 square is no check there. And if you take the bishop, I have check, king here, check, and the queens are traded by force. If you go here, I give a check, and if you go here, I give a check. And in the end, the king and pawn endgame is winning because I have an extra pawn. So Nodirbek resigns there.